Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Podcrushed.
Hello.
Penn?
Penn's like, I'm not going to acknowledge this because I'm not the first voice. I shall not speak.
Yeah, I didn't know what to do.
He was like, wait a second.
Is this real?
Wait a second.
Should I step in? No, let them have it. Bow out gracefully. It's what a good parent does.
You know, I have a question for you, Penn. So I came back just yesterday from visiting one of my best friends, and she has two little kids, two boys, and her oldest is about to turn 3, and she just cut his hair for the first time in his life. She had let it grow out really long, and she was really emotionally attached to it, but he started asking to cut it, and so she did. And then she noticed that she started treating him differently. Like, she expected more of him. He looks a little bit older now that it's cut, and so she's not treating him like he's a not yet 3-year-old. She's treating him more like a 4 or 5-year-old. And it made me wonder, do people treat you differently now that your hair is short?
I thought you were going to ask me something about my children. No. Is there a good, funny, quippy answer there? I think I get recognized more.
Really?
You guys want to talk about that? You guys want to talk about the effects of fame?
We've never touched on that on this podcast. So.
Something novel.
Yeah, no, not really. Not really.
All right.
I want to know, what is your first memory of a book? Like, what's the first book you remember reading?
First things I can remember right now are Goosebumps, you know, which would have been earlier.
Yeah. Were your parents reading that too when you were 2 or 3? Arlstein.
Well, I mean, what am I supposed to have a memory at 2 or 3?
I just don't know.
No, I don't. No, definitely not. No, I mean, and I was reading to myself at that point. So,
How about you, Nava?
The first book that I remember reading, there was a set of books about historical figures called The Value Blank, like the value of determination, the value of perseverance. And they would basically take like the life of someone famous, like Abraham Lincoln or Thomas Jefferson, and then they would like pull out the virtue that they thought that person had demonstrated the most and make a story out of it. So the first one that I remember was The Value of Determination, and it was the story of Helen Keller. And that's like the first book I remember reading as a kid. Yeah.
The first book I remember reading, or my parents reading to me, that became part of our like family history, is a children's book called Alexander and the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day. And it's about this kid who has a bad day. Everything's going wrong. And at the end of the book, his mom lays down with him at night and she says, some days are like that, even in Australia. Because the whole time he's like, I just need to move to Australia. Like, nothing bad will happen to me if I move to Australia. And it's just about how, you know, some days aren't the best. And my mom still talks about that book. I love it. Yeah.
So it's not your memory, it's hers.
Yeah, actually. I don't have any memories.
Okay. Also, I don't know if that's true about Australia. No,
everything's great.
No one's ever had a bad day in Australia.
If Australia is anything like the Australian coffee shops that won't stop popping up in New York or LA, then I tell you what, they need to have more bad days.
Nothing bad happens there. The coffee in Australia is superb. I think some of the best in the world. I'll say
Hot take.
Okay, let's roll into it. We have the Odenkirks. Of course, Bob Odenkirk is the award-winning actor and writer, legend in comedy, and you know him from things like Breaking Bad, Mr. Show. I mean, it's a long and very prestigious resume. His daughter Erin Odenkirk is an accomplished multimedia artist and illustrator. Together, they co-authored a book of children's poems. Together, they have co-authored. Together, they've co-authored a book. What's it called then? Zillet. Other important rhymes. Together, they've co-authored a book of children's poems and illustrations called Zillet and Other Important Rhymes, which is out now. We really loved having them today. I mean, it was special.
It is
sweet. Special. Present tense, future tense. You're about to hear it if you stick around. We'll be right back. Welcome to Podcrushed. We're your hosts. I'm Penn.
I'm Nava.
And I'm Sophie.
And I think we could have been your middle school besties.
If we weren't too busy hanging out with our parents who are our actual middle school besties.
Nerd. Thank you both for coming on.
Mm-hmm.
Happy to be here, man. Thanks for having us. It's one of my favorite things I've ever done is make this book, and I can't wait for people to get a chance to see it and hopefully read it to their kids.
So, we've heard it a little bit before doing our research and hearing about the book, but why don't you tell our listeners how did this come about? What inspired you?
Well, we had a reading time before bed as part of our, ritual of going to sleep. And that we did that at nap time and at nighttime. And we would read many books, 5 books, 6 books, each time. And I've always been aware of how I was somewhat held back, I would say, by my own ability to believe that I could be a part of show business, be a writer, be an actor, make things. Even though I wrote comedy from when I was like 10 years old, it still was like years into my 20s and even 30s of me going, really? Is this okay? Even though I worked at Saturday Night Live when I was 25, and it's still sort of, it was like a swamp I had to pull my feet out of every time. And I felt like it's a shame, and I wanted my kids to not think like that. I wanted them to just think that the world is something they can be a part of, that they have every right to try to be a writer or musician or singer or anything, really. I think people are limited by what they believe is possible. So here we are reading all these books, and I thought, while we're reading these wonderful, professional, excellent books by Caleb Brown and Dr. Seuss and Shel Silverstein, let's write one, and I'll show them they can be like these. They can do things like this. So we started writing poems and keeping them in this book that I call Old Time Rhymes. And it's really just a bunch of loose pages mostly, with most of them have multiple poems on them.
Wow.
And the kids, literally any notebook that was nearby, we would write a poem or two.
Love that.
And then I would put them in this book, and then this book went on the shelf with all the kids' other books, so that their book that they wrote is right next to Dr. Seuss's book that he wrote.
Wow.
And just to plant that thought that you're a part of this world and you will make this world that you live in. And so it really was to make them think of themselves that way. And then over time, we wrote many poems here, maybe 100 poems in there. I don't know. I knew that some of them were pretty good. Like there was a couple that had a great idea and maybe even good execution. Not many, but a few. So I kept that on a shelf, and I thought maybe one day when I have grandkids, I'll rewrite them for the grandkids. And then the pandemic hit, and Erin had been studying art at Pratt University. And I said, I'll rewrite poems, you make a drawing. We'll see what we have. And that's how it happened.
That's amazing.
That's brilliant. I feel like something my mom always says is to go around, talk to people, and collect best practices for whatever thing you want advice on, whether it's, relationships, parenting. And I'm about to have a baby too in maybe 6 weeks. And
wow.
This feels like a best practice. This feels to me like something I really want to take in, and I'm sure a lot of people will.
It really occurred to me. It wasn't some plan I had. It was, here we are reading all these books, so many. And I know that people see things that are finished, especially kids. And the world is kind of intimidating, and they go, it's professional and I'll never be that good. It's sort of, I wanted them to see that the raw material of writing a poem as well as you can is the beginnings of that professional stuff that you see in the world.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. Erin, can you corroborate that worked? raising you that way.
Yeah, before this becomes
I
a
love the
best
ideas. It's brilliant, and
No
like
scars.
all hats off to you,
Yeah.
Bob. You know,
Yeah.
it's. I'm curious. Like, you don't often get to then speak to the person who's like, yeah, I was the one he was raising. I mean,
Yeah.
you know how?
Yeah.
Because you are an artist. You've been raised to be an artist, so it sounds like it did.
It worked enough. Yeah. I mean, I have my own layers of self-doubt and perfectionism and, disbelief that I could possibly be. I mean, I have a book coming out and I still am like, I don't think I could ever make a book.
Yeah.
And I think that that's just my own life journey. But I think I was as well set up as I could have been. And even just before this book came out, I knew it would be coming out, and I was graduating from Pratt, and I set a goal for myself that I would make a book of my own drawings, of my own writing that was substantial, that it ended up being my thesis, like a little graphic journal. But that was my own way to prove to myself that I actually can do this for sure. And I'm, my dad is a celebrity, and part of this is the fact that he's already well known, but I have the skills and I can trust myself that, to a degree, I deserve this and I put in the work. And that was maybe that lesson coming back up in my life. So I think it's not a lesson you learn once, but it's a way of meditating on the day and on your power and your onus to put stuff out.
Erin is a perfectionist, and that was something that made it hard to do this, and makes it hard for a kid to do anything. And I've once read somewhere that writer's block is actually all about a desire to be perfect the first time. I mean, that's what causes writer's block. Is if I can't be perfect, I don't want to type a single letter, and you can't do that. I mean, maybe Paul McCartney can, I don't know, but everyone else has to have the vomit draft to start anything. The crappy mess that sort of contains the idea you want in some form that you've been inspired to see in your mind, in your imagination. I'm so thankful that it worked out, because if it hadn't worked out, I think Erin would be judging herself as a failure, which would be a mistake. It was her first try at a book. Penn, you were homeschooled, right? Is that true on your Wikipedia page?
Yeah. So I was sort of, to be honest, I was what you would now call unschooled, because the homeschool was just like a cover to not really be going to school and I was working at a very young age.
Well, do you think that actually helped you to feel included in the professional world of?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So there's a lot of things developmentally that I think it did that I wouldn't encourage others to follow in that path. I mean, I don't know. It could work for some, but I know that there's perils there. But yes, you're right. It did. It welcomed me into the world of making things, of the world of culture, which I think is a lot more stimulating than school in a lot of ways. But at the same time, I got to say I'm a perfectionist with certain with certain things. Although in my trade, as an actor, I'm not at all.
But how can you be? I mean, when you make a movie or a TV show, everybody's contributing their small part, and the director's overseeing it all. But it needs to just magically come together at some point. There's got to be some magic that happens.
Totally. Maybe an awkward segue, but you do have a I think my favorite in the book is Magic Time. And I mean, honestly, because you wait, the punchline is right at the end. You don't know why it's called Magic Time until the very end. And you rhyme volition with magician, which I just thought is like, this is kind of ambitious for a children's book. But what I also found reading it out loud is like there's a cadence where I feel like you're trusting the intelligence of the children, because if it's read out loud by a parent who's actually like, oh, this is like, I'm enjoying this, I'm laughing, then if it's a joy for the parent, I think that transmits so much to the kid. That's what I'm getting with my youngest right now, is like, if you're animated, if you're loving the turns of phrase, they don't have to understand every little bit. They're probably not going to anyway,
That's right. And that's how I talk to my kids. I would use the word volition. Come on, well, do it of your own volition. I would say that. And contextually, I think kids pick up things pretty easily, but I also would sometimes contextualize stuff. When we would build a zillet, and a
And by the way,
zillet
let's
is,
tell everybody what a zillet is.
well, zillet is a made-up word that my son,
really?
that my son Nate started to refer to a blanket fort as a zillet. And he did this in a way that was very without explanation. Or he just said, let's build a zillet.
It's a zillet.
One night. And we didn't know what he was talking about. And I wondered if maybe he saw a TV show or somewhere somebody had called a blanket fort a zillet. But we all like the word, and maybe somebody out there used that word once. I don't know.
There's a lawsuit waiting in your inbox.
Yes, there probably. Although, one of the themes of the book is having fun with words and not being afraid to use them kind of loosely. Have fun with them. Use big words, make up words. I feel like it's something I learned as an adult when I was writing Mr. Show. I had two friends who did that. Jack Black and Jay Johnston were two people who make up words all the time. And it makes everyone laugh and smile, and everyone knows what they mean, And I thought, I want my kids to see language that way, not revere it so much that they're afraid of it, and just have fun with it. So we use zillet. Yeah. And we wrote that poem, and the line, be calm or you'll compromise the integrity of the zillet. That's something I said to them when we would build a blanket fort and a zillet. I would say, don't get rambunctious or you'll compromise the integrity of the zillet. You'll knock it over. And so I talk like that all the time to my kids.
So
and I would say, what are you talking about? What the heck?
She throws a pillow at it.
As I get ready to become a parent, one of the things I'm thinking a lot about is how parents create those magical moments for their kids. And one of the things that comes up in the book, there's a poem called Umbrella Practice. And that seems to me like one of those magical moments that you create for your kids as a parent, or a magical tradition. I wonder if you could first tell us, oh, so sweet.
Aww.
If you're not watching the video version of this podcast, you need to.
Bob is showing us a picture of, I presume, Erin under an umbrella.
Yeah,
there's
Nate's there too. He's got his back to you, but there's Erin, and I've got the hose, and I shouldn't be doing that because we're in LA, but we didn't do umbrella practice for an hour.
I love that you noted in the poem it was only a minute. I thought that's they're covering themselves here. So I want you to tell our listeners what was umbrella practice, but then also maybe if either of you could give some tips, some tricks of how do you create those magical moments? What was that like for you, Erin, growing up in a household that had traditions like that?
It's funny. I never would have considered my family one with traditions because they weren't talked about within the in-group so much. They were just things that happened. And only upon reflection have I realized that they were unique to us and actually very formative and special. Umbrella practice was really fun. It would usually be a really early morning activity, like just after or just before breakfast. We probably did it a handful of times, but, Dad would be like, go get the umbrellas. Come on. It's time to practice. And sometimes we'd wear trash bags over our outfits, which is just so silly, especially in LA where it never rains and the yard is full of cactus. And he would spray the hose in the air and make it rain, and we'd run around and laugh. And it's so fun to play in the rain. And it's doubly fun to play in fake rain.
Yeah.
So it's just, super special memory. And there's so many of these poems come from genuine childhood traditions and characters my dad would do.
Look at that little girl.
She's really look the exact same.
You really do.
Thanks.
So sweet.
Yeah.
Well, we had these umbrellas, right? and it's LA, so you're never using literally.
Why did you have umbrellas?
I don't know why,
Yeah.
but you use them every 3 years. You use them once. Anyway, I wanted my kids to know how to work an umbrella.
So cute.
Erin, I wanted to know, for you as the illustrator of the book, was there a poem that was particularly challenging to illustrate, and was there one that brought you like particular joy?
They were all kind of challenging. A lot of the process for me was finding a style. I was 19 when I started working on it, and I didn't have a ton of illustration practice. I wasn't particularly confident, and I'd never done a project this extensive, and so the whole process was long and difficult. I particularly had a lot of problem with the school bus illustration for Dad. Help me out with the name of this poem.
A Day at the Park.
I think it was really difficult during the pandemic to draw completely from my imagination. I like drawing from reference, and I've never really had a lot of practice drawing kids. So having this big spread with a bunch of kids goofing off and trying to get the attitudes just right was, a challenge. And conversely, the drawing for that time of year, which is just a drawing of plants, I went out to my garden and I sat there for an hour and I just drew what I saw, and it came out so well. I think it goes with the poem beautifully. And it just makes me smile every time I look at it, and it reminds me of home.
Yeah, I've got to say, Erin, the one I can't believe you figured out is lollygagging. Like, how do you draw someone lollygagging?
That's so good.
It's really good.
And then the dog is helping.
Yeah.
Like, that's amazing what you found to present as,
Thanks.
I love the style that you went with, finding the style for this book.
Thank
it's
you.
So cool. So maybe not the most elegant segue, but we do want to talk about your younger years for both of you and your coming of age, your adolescence. We've heard, Bob, that you've said you still feel like 14-year-old Bob. And I want to know a little bit more about that. What was 14-year-old Bob like, and what is it about your younger self that still resonates with you?
When I was 14, that's when my dad left the house, and it was really awesome. It just was so great. I remember just smiling for days because he was gone. And so I think you people get stuck at different points in their life.
Yeah.
And that's just the way. I don't think I'm always 14. I just think that I sort of revert to that age easily. And so it was a time when I was given a degree of freedom, and an attention that was running through my life just went away. And so I think for those two reasons, it's a place that I naturally gravitate towards. I still think that 14-year-old way of looking at the world, which is to say, that's around an age where you really start to sense that the adults might be full of shit and that they don't really know what they're doing. That's how I see the world and other people. And sometimes I go too far, and I don't give enough respect to other people and their own efforts they've made. Everybody's got a story, and you should go easy on people because you don't know their story. But anyway, that's why I said that about always being 14.
Bob, were you at that age already starting to form an identity as like a storyteller, either through acting or writing?
Yeah. Monty Python, when I was 11, watching that show was a thing that sort of brought the world into focus in a way that impacted me deeply. And then my teachers in junior high allowed me to write sketches for my projects for 1 year. And I wrote like 4 sketches that we performed over the course of this year. And they went over great. They were funny. They had information in them. And it stuck with me how fun that was, how much I loved it. So, and when I was about 11, I remember borrowing my mom's typewriter. She had a typewriter, a manual one, and typing out comedy sketches that I wrote. One was a fake commercial for Tasty Paste, which was, I guess, a toothpaste that you can eat. And so I just, that's where I was inspired to do that. And I think Python was the thing that told me that silliness and being funny was an existential response to the mysteries of life.
Mm-hmm. Was that a special modification that your teachers made just for you to be able to do sketches for your projects? Like, was there something about you as a student that they were like, oh, Bob needs this?
I don't remember anyone else doing them.
Yeah.
Other people did they wrote up a paper. I don't remember anyone else putting on a little show.
That's cool.
And they had me do it, and not only do it in that class, because it was called a pod. It was 3 classes: social studies and English, and I don't know what the other third one was, but it would have been language related. And in this pod, they let me do this all year. And then because, it did well, they would send me around the school and I would do the little play, which usually had 1 or 2 other people in it, and in the other classrooms around the school. No question that impacted me and made me feel like rewarded and engaged with life in a good way. I remember meeting Ben Stiller, and Ben was talking about being a director. And I was like, who thinks about being a director? I mean, how do you even believe that you could be a director? And of course, he grew up in show business, and he saw all these people doing all these different jobs, and they were all legitimate efforts that you could pursue. But for me, this was such a journey to believe that I could be a part of the creative side of life professionally.
Wow. Erin, obviously, like, middle school and coming of age is sort of universally challenging, and I'm wondering how the added factor of growing up in like a family that's well known. I mean, I guess you wouldn't know another way, but how do you feel like coming of age has been for you? Like, what were those years like? And then sort of with that extra element, how has it impacted you?
And also, how hard is it to answer that question in front of your father?
It's averagely hard. I don't know. I guess we've never really talked about it all that much. I have thought about it a lot. I was very self-conscious at the time, as most 13-year-olds are, and also didn't really believe that I was all that self-conscious, thought I was just, trying. The battle I had with it was suddenly I was 12 or 13, and there was this thing that I knew some people thought was cool. And the weird part is it was mostly older people. It was mostly like 18-year-olds, 20-year-olds, even 30 and 40-year-olds. And it was a thing that had to do with me, but it didn't have anything to do with me also. It was a weird few years of trying to understand what it meant and what it felt like to have someone know this fact about me, and the kind of fleeting, it's kind of a cool thing for like 1 second, and then it just becomes so deeply uncomfortable, and you feel so weird for having shared it as if it mattered. The coolest things about my dad are how silly he is and how present he is and what a good person he is and what good advice he gives. And he's a great actor and he's done great things and written great things, but they don't have anything to do, or they didn't have anything to do with me when I was 13. They just were his job. And so trying to piece through that and understand who I was in relation to it and how to approach a world that seemed to care about it, but not about me, but kind of about me because of it, was a lot. And I think I have come to a pretty good place with it. And, with this book coming out, part of it is being faced again, and I'm just accepting it as is and trying to internalize the idea that the work I put into the book is real and good, and it's not just happening, and I'm not just talking to you about it on this podcast solely because my dad is an actor, but my dad is an actor, and we wrote this thing, and I drew things for it and worked on it for 4 years, and now it's a book.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like the fact that you didn't get automatic yeses, that you got all no's, is proof that it didn't happen because your dad is an actor. Then it would have been an automatic yes. So
that was it was two things. And all of you, that was the scariest moment because here's my daughter. I told her, let's do this. She, over the course of a year, did this. We submitted it to all the big publishers. They all said no. One said, we'll do it with you, but please make it abrasive and loud and make it like anime and intense. And I thought, oh, she's going to feel like she failed. And because I'm famous, she's going to think, oh, well, I screwed it up. I wrecked it because he could sell it on his own. He doesn't, and I'm like, oh, why did I set her up for such a big no? I mean,
you know what? It didn't feel that bad when everyone said no. And I was in these interviews, I got asked about that, and I've been thinking about why maybe. And the conclusion that I came to is that the initial request from my dad to work on this was enough of the confidence and the, onus and giving myself the right to work on it and do it and feel like it could be a real thing, which I feel like totally harkens back to us writing poems together as a dad and a 4-year-old, It's the same, like, I'm giving you permission to participate and be taken seriously in something that's fun and silly, but also it worked.
That is so sweet.
That's really sweet.
That's really beautiful, actually.
Yeah. It is really beautiful and really meaningful.
13 of the poems are exactly what we wrote. But a lot of these poems in this book are not great. Like kids would, I farted into my hat, put it on, and went out like that. I ran into my friend Matt, who held his nose and said, that's that.
I don't know.
That's pretty good.
I don't know. I think.
Here's another one. Ice cream is not a lunch, but how about an ice cream sandwich to munch? Or ice cream with noodles or with cereal? Let's try it sometime, or I'll call you Muriel.
I like it. I like these.
I love that. That's so cute.
Bob, I can see you're such a beaming dad, and I'm just curious, do you have a standout memory of Erin and your son from when they were like coming of age, like 11, 12, 13, like a happy year?
Well, this is one that I love so much. Erin was like 6 years old. She was a very little kid. And I was being really silly, doing like a character voice. And she didn't laugh or anything. She was just looking at me, and I finish, and I look at her, and she goes, bad. I just loved it so much. It was so critical and smart and self-composed.
I think I came of age at 6.
Yeah, right.
I think that was my...
just ahead of the curve.
I think you definitely had a sense of yourself distant from me and from your parents, and your ability to critique what we were doing or saying. You were separate. And it was very cool. Also very mature. Nate was a very silly kid and always loved, both kids loved comedy. Okay, so one time Nate came in to me when he was about, he must have been 13 or 14, because the kids didn't watch Mr. Show when they were little, but their friends did. Their friends saw it before they did. But he came in and he looked at me and he said, Dad, you're on Breaking Bad, Mr. Show, Tim and Eric. You're on all my favorite shows. And he was not happy. He was not happy. It was bumming him out. Why? I don't know. But I kind of think it's like this. Like, imagine having your favorite show you love to watch, and then every once in a while, your dad's face.
Oh,
Yeah, like
no.
ruins it.
Yeah. I get that.
Yeah.
I get that. You want it to be your own. You want to discover something that is you. It's proof that your identity is it's based on nothing else. It's just you, I guess. That's not put very elegantly, but I get that.
I think you're right. It was funny. I was so thankful I was on his favorite shows, but he was so clearly not.
Yeah.
At least he was
Ruining my favorite
tortured by
things.
it.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's so funny. How about you, Erin? Do you have a standout memory of your dad from that time in your life?
Let's see. Around that time, you started going to Albuquerque a lot. So we actually weren't around each other a lot. But we'd FaceTime a lot. He'd come home every weekend he could. And then I would go visit him like 2 or 3 times of the year and stay with him in Albuquerque. And we would always do the same, like 4 things. We would go to Tinkertown, which is a little museum of tiny collected objects in the middle of the desert. We would go on a hike in the like Red Rock Mountains.
Tree Spring Trail off the 14. Go do it if you're down there.
Okay.
And then we would go to
Santa Fe. Yeah.
And go to Santa Fe and usually spend the night or something, walk through the town there. And I remember, as I'm talking, it's coming to me. I remember one time I brought my friend. I would sometimes bring friends with me, and I brought my friend Paige, and we were really into the sunset, like just as a concept, as a thing to observe, in kind of the romantic, like 13, 14-year-old way that you might be. And we were in Santa Fe that night, and the sky in Albuquerque, I don't know if you've ever been, but the sky in New Mexico is giant. It is huge. It's sprawling. The land is so flat. The sky just goes on forever. And the sunsets are stunning. There are all sorts of colors, and they're just massive. And so we were in Santa Fe this night, and the sun started setting, and it was like orange and purple and every color that a sunset could possibly be. And I was like, Dad, can we please go to, we had just finished eating. I was like, can we please go to the roof of this parking garage to see the sunset? And he was like, sure. And so me and my best friend went up to watch the sunset from this roof of a parking garage in New Mexico. And I didn't think he cared that much, but when I got home, he had sent me a message. It was a photo of me and my friend watching the sunset. And it was like, maybe you remember it better, Dad, but it was something like, thank you for visiting and for reminding me how lovely a sunset could be. Aww. And to be that age and to have your dad, kind of take something from time with you or learn something from time spent with you really meant a lot to me.
That's so sweet.
So sweet. I love this.
This is like, there's moments of this, guys, where we've never been able to explore this with like a parent-child duo.
It's really
and it's very, it's extremely touching and tender. So thank you for like just that.
I was of 7 kids in my family, and I was the second oldest. And my sister Sue was born when I was 14. So I really got to understand how much fun little kids can be when I was young. And so I knew, there's nothing more entertaining, right, than a kid. There's no TV show or movie or book you could ever make that would be as fun and also challenging, no question, and make you as tired. But gosh, they're just entertaining as hell. And so I was very lucky to know that before I had kids, as well as to know how to change a diaper and other things. So I don't know. I got to approach being a dad with a sense of how much I enjoyed kids and how much fun you could have being around them.
We're coming to our last questions that we want to ask you both, which I think you can take some time on. But I do want to ask real quick, Bob, how old were you when you first had kids?
I'm 61. Nate's 24. Anybody help me with that?
So are we in
37?
there?
37.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Yeah, I'm just curious because there's so much about when you become a parent
Yes.
is a huge part of that. And for some people earlier, for some people later, whatever.
Obviously, when you have kids, you know that, like, gosh, I was supposed to have kids when I was 18 because they're wiping me out. And I had so much energy then. But
Yes.
that's, of course, only partially true. And the better truth is this. If you have kids when you're older, you have a little secret weapon if you can use it, which is patience. You've seen a lot in the world. You know how things work. And you can win any disagreement, contentious moment with patience. You don't need to yell. You don't need to get angry and get big. You can win by saying, all right, well, we'll wait until you do it. And even though you might miss a doctor's visit or you might miss a thing or two, you will win every fight.
Yeah. Right.
Wow.
And you don't have to get mad. You don't have to yell. You just have to mean it and be cool and calm. And so that's the value of being an older parent is hopefully you've developed some sense of the rhythm of life.
I love that.
Yeah.
So our classic question, which we'll ask you both, is if you could go back to your 12-year-old self, what would you say or do, if anything?
I'd read the poem in this book called Later.
Bob, could we get you to read it? Would that be?
Sure. I'll read it to you right now.
Thank you.
Later is coming, make no mistake. Now will not help you to guess just how great it can be, so much better than yester what's past. Don't look back, let's look forward. Later comes slow and then fast. Sometimes you may wonder, where's this later? It's late. I want later right now. I've no time left to wait. But that ant in your pants, I implore you, ignore it. Later's coming, I promise. Just stick around for it.
Oh, I needed to hear that.
It's deep.
That's good.
What about you, Erin?
Erin, you could also just read that poem again if you want. But what about you, Erin? If you could go back to your 12-year-old self, what would you say?
I would say that nothing you do, I have to say it in the right way, if I only get 1 minute to talk to her, but nothing you do matters that much right now. And that's a good thing. And that you would have so much more you've learned, and you'll gain so much more if you take everything a little bit less seriously right now. I think that I maybe missed out on some stuff by trying to be too adult, too mature, too composed, too on my game. Because when you're that age, you feel like that's all there is. And it's not until you're older that you realize that none of it mattered so significantly. So
Erin was a perfectionist as a kid. Like, she would turn in her papers last, but not because she was lazy. She just worked. She believed it wasn't good. It wasn't good enough. It wasn't good enough. She got all A's.
And maybe just being okay with it being not good enough would have been a good release for that girl.
Thank you so much for your time. We're so appreciative. It was so nice to meet you both.
Yeah.
Thank
you
you
both
guys
for having us on.
And thank you for the copies of the book. It's wonderful.
I love it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Take care, guys.
All right.
Bye, guys.
Bye,
Bye.
guys. You can buy Zillet and Other Important Rhymes by Bob and Erin Odenkirk anywhere you buy books. And you can keep up with Bob on Instagram at @TheRealBobOdenkirk. You can also see Erin's beautiful artwork on her website, erinodenkirk.com.
You there, Penn? Penn? He can't hear us. Penn? Is he frozen?
No.
It's just he's so perfectly still sometimes. It's crazy.